Hey guys, if you were born a medieval child in a bustling town known for its public bathhouses, you wouldn't take your first breath in a hushed, pristine chamber. It would be in a place where the scent of warm water, damp wood, and burning pine from the bathhouse fires drifts in from the street, mingling with the faint tang of soap and the earthier smells of horses clopping past the door. Outside, men and women in wool cloaks pass under banners fluttering above shop fronts, carrying baskets of bread or jugs of ale, their cheeks flushed either from the cold or from the steam still clinging to them after a long soak. You arrive into this world wrapped in the low hum of voices from the street and the occasional hiss of bathhouse boilers venting through their rooftop pipes, a sound that will become as familiar to you as your own heartbeat. You are small, smaller than a sack of flour from the baker down the lane, your skin red and wrinkled, your fists clenched tightly as though you already sensed the world might take some coaxing to warm to. Your mother, pale but triumphant, lies back on a straw-stuffed mattress in a room above a shop, the shutters cracked just enough to let in the smell of wet cobblestones. Your father, if he's in the room at all, is pacing near the hearth, glancing between you and the window as though expecting the town crier to announce your arrival. And while you wouldn't survive this era without the relentless care of those around you, disease and misfortune lurking just beyond the next turning, your first minutes are marked by the comfort of being swaddled in wool and tucked close to the warmth of the fire. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. And while you're here, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. From the moment you draw your first breath, the bathhouse is part of your world. Even before you can walk, you hear the echoing calls of its attendants, smell the rosemary steam curling into the street, and feel the slight tremble of the cobblestones when the great water carts roll past, bringing fresh supplies from the river. You were not born in the bathhouse itself, though some children in town are, but in a place so close you can hear the muffled chatter from its doors. The midwife rubs your limbs with warmed oil, not just to keep you supple, but because oiling a newborn is thought to keep out chill vapors that cause sickness. She swaddles you tightly, binding your arms to your sides so your warmth doesn't escape, then hands you to your mother with the brisk assurance of someone who has done this 100 times. Outside, the bells mark the hour, and you, too new to notice, begin your life in a town where steam and stone define the rhythm of every day. Your first true encounter with the waters that shape this town's heartbeat comes only a few days after your birth, in the form of what the midwife calls your cleansing dip. It is not a grand bath, no tile-lined pool or echoing vaulted chamber, but a shallow wooden tub placed beside the hearth, steam rising faintly from its surface. The water has been fetched from the bathhouse itself, carried in a copper bucket still warm from the great boilers, and into it, the midwife has dropped sprigs of rosemary and sage. She swears the herbs will not only sweeten you, but also guard against the lurking fevers that seem to slip into newborns as easily as drafts into a badly sealed shutter. You are unwrapped slowly, your wool swaddling peeled away like the layers of a loaf's crust, revealing limbs still curled from the memory of the womb. The midwife supports you with one arm, her hands splayed behind your head, and lowers you so that only your feet touch the water at first. Your toes twitch at the shock. It is warmer than the air, but still new enough to make you startle. And then, inch by inch, you are settled into the shallow pool. The rosemary scent rises sharply around you, its green, almost peppery bite cutting through the smoky sweetness of the hearth fire. There is no soap, not for someone as newly arrived as you. Instead, the midwife scoops water with her free hand and lets it trickle down your arms and chest, murmuring a half-prayer, half-lullaby under her breath. She rubs a drop of oil along the bridge of your nose and behind your ears, claiming it will keep you from drying out in the winter air. Outside, you can hear the faint clatter of bathhouse patrons heading home, their voices muffled, their footsteps quick on the cobblestones, steam still clinging to their hair. When she decides you are clean, or clean enough for someone so small, she lifts you free, your skin flushed from the warmth, and wraps you in linen that smells faintly of sun and lavender from the summer past. You are pressed into your mother's arms, who leans down to breathe in the scent of you, perhaps remembering her own first bath in that very same tub decades ago. The used water, still fragrant with herbs, is carried outside and tossed onto the cobblestones, where it runs in a thin ribbon toward the street's central gutter, joining the trickle that flows from the bathhouse drains. It is a small ritual, barely a taste of what the great public baths offer, but it marks your first meeting with the element that will follow you all your life here. Water that is never just water, but always touched by heat, by herbs, by the murmurs of those who believe it can both cleanse and protect. As you grow into the unsteady years of early childhood, the bathhouse becomes less a distant place of mysterious steam and more a constant backdrop to your days, even when you are not inside it. Your family's home sits close enough that you can hear the echo of voices from within its walls, laughter that spills into the street, the sharp bark of an attendant calling for more hot water, the muffled splash of someone sliding into a pool. The smell is there too, drifting in whenever the wind favors your window, a mingling of damp stone, wood smoke, and the green sharpness of rosemary and mint that clings to every patron's hair and clothing as they emerge. Your earliest memories of it are not of bathing, but of watching. You sit on the worn bench just inside the outer entrance, while your parents settle their fee with the attendant, your legs too short to touch the ground. Merchants with flushed faces step past you, tugging on their boots. Washerwomen with red, chapped hands hurry through carrying baskets of fresh linens. A young couple whisper to one another as they disappear down a corridor where the air grows warmer and wetter. You feel all of it like a strange kind of weather. Thicker air, louder voices, the soft slap of water somewhere just out of sight. Even when you are not taken inside, you notice how the bathhouse shapes the rhythms of the town. Market days see it crowded with traders washing away the dust of the road before returning home. In the colder months, a ribbon of steam escapes from the vents in the roof, curling upward like a signal to anyone in need of warmth. On feast days, the place stays open late, lantern light glowing through the wooden shutters, and music from the tavern next door mixing with the hum of conversation from the pools. At home, you sometimes mimic what you've seen, splashing in a small basin while your nursemaid scolds you for getting more water on the floor than on yourself. She tells you you'll go in proper when you're a little older, when you can sit still and mind your manners among grown folk. For now, you learn its rules by osmosis. Never run on wet stone, always rinse before entering a shared pool, keep your voice low near the hotter rooms. By the time you were old enough for your first real visit, you already know the bathhouse as well as the market square or the church steps. It is not just a place where people clean themselves, it is where stories are swapped, deals are struck, and neighbors who haven't spoken in months greet each other as though no time has passed. Even in childhood, you begin to sense that stepping into the bathhouse is like stepping into the town's other heart, the one that beats in heat and steam instead of bells and bread ovens. And though you don't yet understand all of it, you know you want to be part of that warmth. Your first true entrance into the bathhouse comes on a quiet afternoon when the market is finished, the air outside smells faintly of fresh bread, and your parents decide it is time for you to join the family ritual. The outer doors swing inward, letting you step from the cool street into an entirely different climate. Warm, moist air that wraps around you instantly, making your hair cling to your forehead. The sound of water is everywhere, echoing from unseen pools, mingled with the low murmur of conversation. It feels as though the building is breathing. Your family greets the attendant at the desk, an older man whose hands are creased from decades of heat and humidity. Coins change hands, and a small wooden token is passed to your father, granting access to the family's usual pool. You follow them through a corridor lined with hooks for cloaks and baskets for shoes, the stone under your bare feet smooth and faintly damp. The walls here are plastered in pale colors, their surface rippled from years of steam, and the air smells faintly of mint and wood smoke. The family pool lies in a chamber with a high, vaulted ceiling, from which condensation drips slowly into the water below. The pool itself is a large, shallow rectangle of stone, its surface rippling from the movement of the few other bathers. An elderly couple sitting hip-deep at one end, a mother rinsing the hair of her young daughter at the other. Your parents guide you to a low bench built into the pool's edge, where the water is only up to your waist when you sit. It is warmer than you expected, almost like being embraced, and the sensation makes you smile despite yourself. There is a rhythm to it. Your father ladles water over his shoulders before easing himself in. Your mother rinses her arms and neck, then begins to wash her hair, working oil through it before rinsing again. You copy them clumsily, splashing too much at first, earning a soft laugh from the old man across the pool. No one rushes here. People linger, stretching their legs, leaning against the smooth stone edges, occasionally stepping out to wrap themselves in linen and sip warm, spiced wine from small clay cups before returning to the water. The family ritual is not just about cleaning, it's about being together. The three of you moving in an unspoken sequence learned over years of visits. Your parents talk quietly, the kind of conversation that drifts and wanders, touching on small matters of the household and neighbors' doings. You listen, half dreaming, the warmth making your eyelids heavy. When it is time to leave, you are wrapped in thick linen and let out into the cooler air of the street, your skin still tingling, your hair smelling faintly of rosemary from the water. That night, you fall asleep faster than you can remember, as though some part of you is still floating in that warm, echoing chamber. You begin to understand why people call it the heart of the town. It is not only a place of water, but a place where the world feels slower, where time moves in steam instead of hours.
The next time you visit, your eyes are no longer fixed entirely on the water. You begin to notice the building itself, the quiet grandeur of a place designed not just for function, but for lingering. The bathhouse feels almost like a second church, its high vaulted ceilings supported by thick stone pillars that are darkened near the base from years of steam and splashing. Light filters in through small, arched windows set high above, softened by the constant mist in the air, so that even in the middle of the day, the chamber glows as though lit by candlelight. The floors are a patchwork of worn tiles, reds, creams, and faded blues that grow warm underfoot the closer you get to the heated pools. Some tiles are cracked, others smoothed to a satin finish by generations of bare feet passing over them. In the larger rooms, carved benches line the walls, their surfaces polished by countless hours of bathers sitting, leaning, and talking. The walls themselves are plastered in pale lime, but here and there you see murals, half-faded scenes of flowers, fountains, and women pouring water from tall jugs. No one seems to mind that the colors have run or the edges flaked away. In fact, the wear makes them feel as if they have always been there, part of the bathhouse's living memory. As you wander with your parents, you pass through a series of connected chambers, each with its own character. The largest pool sits in the central hall, its surface open and inviting, surrounded by smaller rooms that hold hotter baths, cooler plunge pools, or private tubs for those who pay extra. Arched doorways connect them all, and each time you pass through one, the air shifts, sometimes hotter and denser, sometimes cooler and carrying the faint mineral tang of a different water source. The roof above the main hall is ribbed with heavy beams, from which lanterns hang, their light glinting off the steam in slow-moving halos. Somewhere above that, are vents to let the hot air escape, their placement so precise that the steam never clouds the room entirely, but always hangs in graceful, curling layers. The acoustics are curious. Voices carry, but not sharply. A laugh from the far end of the hall reaches you softened, almost like it has been filtered through warm cloth. You start to notice the small things too, the way the water laps gently against the carved stone edges, the faint drip-drip from high above, the smell of pine resin from the torches in the corridor. There is a sense of deliberate design, as if the bathhouse is meant to feel timeless. The outside world kept at bay not only by its thick walls, but by the very way it shapes air, light, and sound. And as you trail your fingers along the damp stone, you realize that this place is more than a building. It is a container for warmth itself, holding not just heat in its pools, but the comfort of shared space, where people come to float not only in water, but in a rhythm of life older than any of them.
One of the first things you grow curious about, as your visits become more regular, is how all this warmth and water appears, as if by magic, ready every day without fail. The bathhouse is not simply a room with a pool. It is an entire machine humming behind the scenes, and on certain afternoons, when your father is in a generous mood, he lets you follow him past a heavy door marked for attendance only. The air changes immediately, growing hotter, drier, and scented with smoke. Here is the hidden heart of the place, the water heating and plumbing that keep the baths alive. At the far end of a long, low chamber, enormous copper boilers squat like sleeping beasts, their rounded bellies glowing faintly in the firelight. Beneath them, wide-mouthed furnaces roar, tended by men stripped to the waist, their skins shining with sweat despite the cold weather outside. They shovel in wood and, when available, bundles of pine branches whose resin snaps and pops in the flames, filling the room with a sharp, clean scent. The fire's heat radiates outward, prickling your cheeks until you instinctively step back. From the boilers, wooden pipes, hollowed logs, carefully joined and sealed with pitch, carry the hot water into the main pools. Smaller clay channels feed the private tubs, each with a simple plug and drain system that lets the water be changed between bathers. You were surprised to learn there is a second set of channels carrying cooler water drawn from a nearby stream and filtered through gravel pits before it reaches the building. Attendants can mix the two at will, opening small hatches with polished brass handles to adjust the temperature. You watch one worker draw a ladle of water from a boiler, test it with his fingers, and nod before tipping it into a jug bound for one of the hotter rooms. Another man hauls a fresh bucket from the well, pours it into a tank above, and then checks the seams for leaks. The precision is constant. Too cold and the bathers will complain. Too hot and they will leave red-faced and grumbling. It is a balance learned over years, a dance between fire, water, and the steady hands that manage them. Your father tells you, almost in a whisper, that the bathhouse never truly sleeps. Even at night, when the main doors are barred and the rooms lie empty, the boilers are kept warm so that the next morning's first bathers can step straight into heat and steam. Fires are banked low, water levels checked, and the quiet rush of pipes fills the empty corridors like the sound of distant rain. When you step back into the public rooms after your little tour, the baths seem different. You can picture the path the water has taken, from stream to boiler to pipe, shaped and coaxed into comfort by hands you never see when you're soaking under the vaulted ceiling. And you begin to understand that the bathhouse is not only a place of warmth, it is a living thing, one that breathes through its furnaces and circulates life through its channels, sustained by the work of people who keep the magic hidden so the rest of the town can simply sink in and sigh.
With each visit, you start to notice not only the pools and the rooms, but the people who make the bathhouse hum. They are as much a part of its rhythm as the boilers and the steam, moving with practiced ease through spaces that seem chaotic to newcomers. There is the doorkeeper, always stationed on his tall stool near the entrance, whose eyes are sharp enough to spot an unpaid token at 20 paces, but warm enough to slip a sweet to a shy child on a quiet day. He knows everyone by name, and somehow remembers which families prefer the hotter pools, which merchants linger over the cold plunge, and which travelers need to be gently reminded of the rules. Then there are the attendants. Lean, quick-moving men and women in simple linen shifts, their hair tied back, their skin perpetually dewy from the steam. They carry buckets of hot water from the boilers to the smaller rooms, refill basins for those scrubbing before their soak, and sweep away stray leaves or grit tracked in from the street. Some are chatty, trading jokes with bathers as they pass. Others work in silence, their attention on the small details, like making sure each lantern is trimmed and burning evenly. The washerwomen are a world unto themselves, presiding over the laundry corner where stacks of linen sheets and drying cloths form white steaming hills. They slap and twist the fabric with rhythmic precision, dipping it in vats of hot water infused with ash soap and sometimes rosemary to keep it smelling fresh. They gossip freely among themselves, their voices rising over the thud of wet cloth against the benches, and you learn more about the town's hidden dramas here than anywhere else. Near the hotter rooms, a pair of older women sit with baskets of oils and combs, offering grooming services. Hair oiling, beard trimming, even a brisk massage with coarse linen mitts to wake the blood. The wealthier patrons indulge in these little luxuries. The rest glance wistfully as they pass. A few men tend to the fires themselves, bare-armed and red-cheeked, shoveling wood into the roaring mouths of the furnaces until their foreheads gleam with sweat. They work in heat so intense, you wonder if they ever need to bathe at all. You begin to realize that for the workers, the bathhouse is not a place of leisure. It is a stage on which they perform their part in an endless cycle of preparation and upkeep. The pools may empty at night, but the work continues. Linens washed and dried, floors scrubbed, fires tended, herbs gathered for the next day's water. Without them, the warmth you enjoy would vanish in hours, the carefully balanced harmony collapsing into cold stone and silence. And yet, there is a pride in the way they move, a sense that their labor is part of something larger than any one person. They may not linger in the pools themselves, but their fingerprints are everywhere. In the smooth stone scrubbed clean before you step in the faint perfume of the linen that wraps you afterward, in the quiet assurance that when you return next week, the water will be ready, the fire will be hot, and the steam will rise once more like a living thing.
It isn't long before you begin to notice that the water in the bathhouse never smells quite the same from one visit to the next. Sometimes it carries a bright, almost citrusy edge. Other days it is deep and green, like walking through a herb garden after rain. This is no accident. The attendants treat the pools as carefully as a cook tends a stew, adding sprigs, petals, and powders to suit the season, the mood, or the needs of the bathers. On summer mornings, they favor cooling herbs, mint leaves bruised between their palms before being tossed into the water so the scent blooms instantly, or lemon balm stripped from its stems in fistfuls, the pale green leaves swirling lazily across the surface. In the darker months, they turn to rosemary, thyme, and juniper berries, their resinous oils rising with the steam to warm your lungs with every breath. On festival days, baskets of rose petals are scattered across the larger pools, the soft curls of color drifting toward the edges where children scoop them up and pretend to brew potions. You learn quickly that these additions aren't just for pleasure. The herbal mixtures are chosen with intent, some meant to ease sore joints, others to clear the head or soften the skin. The washerwomen mutter about old remedies, how sage wards off chills, how chamomile soothes the nerves, how marjoram keeps the winter heaviness from settling in your chest. Whether the cures work or not, you can't say, but you do know that stepping into a pool scented with fresh lavender feels different from one clouded with crushed bay leaves, as though each carries its own kind of mood. Sometimes you watch the process from the edge of the pool. An attendant arrives with a woven basket, the contents hidden under a damp cloth. Kneeling, they dip the basket into the water, tilting it slowly so the herbs spill out in a drifting cloud, the heat coaxing their fragrance into the air almost immediately. A handful might be crushed between palms before being sprinkled on the surface, releasing an extra burst of scent that makes you close your eyes for a moment just to breathe it in. There are stranger additions, too. Once, in late autumn, the attendant stirred in a dark, sticky mixture that smelled faintly of pine tar and honey, explaining to a curious merchant that it was for drawing out the cold from the bones. Another time, during a wave of coughs in the town, the pools were treated with vinegar and thyme, the sharpness of the steam prickling your eyes but leaving you oddly invigorated afterward. The locals took it in stride. After all, the bathhouse had always been as much a place of healing as of cleaning. Over the years, you come to associate certain scents with certain moments. Rosemary for the start of winter, mint for the relief of summer heat, rose petals for the gentle chaos of feast days. You may not remember every conversation or every face in the steam, but the smell of the water stays with you, a memory you carry even beyond the walls, lingering in your hair and clothes as you step back into the cobbled streets. It is the bathhouse's way of claiming you for a little while longer, even after you've left its embrace. By the time you're old enough to sit in the pools without constantly splashing your neighbors, you've learned that the bathhouse is not just a place for soaking. It's a place where information moves faster than the water itself.
The steam doesn't just warm the body, it softens tongues, loosens secrets, and turns the air into a kind of invisible marketplace where gossip and business are traded with equal ease. You notice it first in the murmured exchanges between merchants. They lean toward each other on the edge of the pool, voices low but animated, their fingers tracing invisible maps of trade routes in the air. One might have just returned from the coast with a shipment of fine salt. Another has word that a caravan of wool merchants will arrive before the month's end. The warmth seems to dissolve suspicion. Deals are struck here without parchment, sealed instead with a nod and the slow clink of rings against the pool's stone edge. On the women's side of the bathhouse, the talk is livelier, the laughter easier. Matchmakers drift through like shadows, never pushing too hard but planting ideas. Which families have eligible sons, whose daughters have just learned the finer points of bread making or embroidery, who might be open to an alliance sealed with a dowry and a handshake. Between the splashes and the occasional squeal from a child in the shallows, the air hums with the careful weaving of futures. And then there is the gossip, quick, darting, and sometimes as slippery as a fish. Someone's cousin has been seen at the market with a stranger. A certain official's cloak smelled faintly of foreign spices, suggesting he's had guests from far away. The miller's apprentice has been spending too much time near the baker's daughter's stall. The bathhouse amplifies these stories, carrying them from one ear to another like steam curling upward to the rafters. It's not only private lives that get dissected here. Town matters are discussed as freely as family affairs. The baker complains about the rising price of flour. The tanner mutters about a dispute over river access. Some would suggest that the council might be planning new taxes based on the mayor's sudden fondness for holding private baths with certain guild leaders. More than once, you see disputes settled before they ever reach the town square, the tension eased by a shared soak and a bit of compromise that might not have happened in the cold light of day. You learn to keep your ears open without staring too obviously, to absorb the rhythm of these exchanges. The bathhouse is both neutral ground and invisible stage, a place where social rank can bend slightly in the face of shared heat and bare skin. A wealthy merchant might sit elbow to elbow with a craftsman if the pool is crowded, and for a brief while, the difference between them is no more than the pattern of their linen when they step out. By the time you leave, your skin is warm, your hair damp, and your head buzzing with half-heard stories. Some will prove true, others will twist and change before you hear them again. But you understand now that the bathhouse's waters don't just carry heat, they carry words. And once spoken in steam, those words have a way of traveling far beyond the tiled walls.
After enough visits, you begin to realize that the bathhouse is not a place people simply rush through. It is a destination meant to be lingered in, and that includes eating and drinking between soaks. The idea of sipping wine or nibbling sweetmeats while sitting in a room full of steam might sound strange to someone who has never been here, but for the regulars, it is part of the experience, almost as essential as the hot water itself. In the outer antechamber, just beyond the damp stone thresholds of the main pools, there was a long wooden table kept stocked with simple fare. Wooden cups hold spiced wine, warmed just enough so that the scent of cinnamon and clove rises with each breath. Small clay jugs of watered ale sit alongside them for those who want something lighter. The food is humble but satisfying. Honeyed pastries that stick slightly to your fingers, slices of cheese wrapped in fresh leaves to keep them from drying, flatbreads still warm from the oven, and bowls of olives glistening with oil. It's not uncommon to see bathers step out of the water, wrap themselves in a linen sheet, and wander barefoot to the table for a snack before returning to their pool. The act of eating in the midst of bathing turns the whole experience into something almost theatrical. You watch a merchant chew thoughtfully on a piece of bread while listening to a stonemason's story, both of them dripping water onto the rushes underfoot, unconcerned. Even the attendants, when the pools are quiet, might share a quick bite in the corner, laughing over some bit of gossip before hurrying back to their duties. On festival days, the fare becomes more elaborate. There might be jugs of sweet, sticky mead, plates of dried figs and nuts, or a pot of mulled wine so rich with spice it perfumes the entire antechamber. Sometimes musicians will come in from the street and play quietly near the food table, their lutes and flutes blending with the hum of voices and the occasional splash from the pools. The music wraps around you as you eat, as though you've stepped into a celebration where time has decided to slow to a crawl. You learn that the food and drink are not just for indulgence, they keep people here longer. A well-fed, warmly sipped bather stays to talk, to trade news, to strike a bargain, to listen to stories. The bathhouse thrives not because of the water alone, but because it becomes a living room for the whole town, a place where no one feels they must rush away once they are warm and comfortable. As you sit cross-legged on a low bench, nibbling at a piece of sweet bread and letting the steam soften every muscle in your body, you understand how easy it would be to lose an entire day here. Hours slip past unnoticed when your stomach is full, your skin is warm, and the murmur of voices make you feel as though you are part of something both timeless and gently, irresistibly alive.
There are days in the year when the bathhouse changes from a place of steady, familiar rhythm into something closer to a living festival. These are the special bathing days tied to the town's calendar, occasions when the baths stay open from sunrise until well after the moon has climbed high, and people come not only to soak, but to celebrate. You first experience one of these on the eve of midsummer, when the air outside is heavy with the scent of cut hay and the streets are bright with garlands. From the moment you approach the bathhouse, you can tell it's different. Lanterns hang from the eaves, their lights spilling across the cobblestones, and bundles of fresh flowers are tied to the doors so that anyone who enters brushes against them, releasing small bursts of fragrance. Inside, the corridors are warmer than usual, almost buzzing with anticipation. The main pool is strung with floating garlands, loops of marigolds, daisies, and sprigs of rosemary drifting lazily in the water, casting tiny shadows on the rippling surface. The attendants have outdone themselves. The water smells of a dozen herbs, mint, chamomile, lavender, and something sharper you can't name. Musicians sit in the corner of the largest chamber, playing soft, winding melodies that seem to blend with the echo of water against stone. Between the songs, the air is filled with laughter, with the low rumble of voices that have shed their everyday caution. On these days, there is no rush to leave the pools. People soak, then wander to the food tables for mulled wine, then return again, their cheeks flushed, not just from the heat, but from the sense of shared celebration. Even strangers greet each other as though they are old friends, exchanging cups, trading stories about the year's harvest or the summer storms. In the cooler pools, children splash under the gentle gaze of their parents, plucking floating flowers from the surface to tuck behind their ears. You notice the small rituals that belong only to these festival baths. Some people dip their heads 3 times under the water, murmuring a wish for health or good fortune in the year ahead. Others bring small bundles of herbs to toss into the pool as offerings, watching the leaves spin and sink. A few older bathers retreat to the hottest rooms, sitting in silence as though letting the steam carry their thoughts far away. By the time you leave, the streets outside are quiet, the lanterns swaying gently in the night breeze. Your skin is warm and scented with half the town's herb garden, your hair still damp but curling in the cool air. The memory of the garlands floating in the water clings to you, vivid and strange, as though you've taken part in something older than the town itself, a mingling of water, heat, and community that feels like a celebration and a kind of unspoken promise that you will return when the next special day comes around.
Over time, you begin to understand that the bathhouse is not just a collection of warm pools. It is a place bound by rules, some written plainly on the walls, and others passed quietly from one generation of bathers to the next. These rules are less about laws and more about a shared code of behavior, designed to keep the peace in a place where dozens of bodies share the same water and the same air. Your first lessons in bathhouse etiquette come not from your parents, but from watching those around you. The first rule is rinsing. No one steps straight into the communal pool without first washing in the small basins along the side. The basins are filled from a steady trickle of warm water, and beside them are ladles for scooping over your arms, chest, and hair. Even the children know to do it. Attendants will gently but firmly send you back if you forget. The rinse isn't just for cleanliness, it's a kind of acknowledgement, a way of saying, I'm part of this space and I'll care for it like everyone else. The second rule is about voices. Conversations are welcome, expected even, but the tone must be soft enough that it blends with the steam and the splash of water. Loud laughter is fine in the antechamber or over the food tables, but in the hotter pools, where people come to relax or think, voices drop to a low murmur. Even disagreements tend to dissolve into quiet words. It is difficult to shout when the warmth is loosening your shoulders and slowing your heartbeat. There is also an unspoken choreography to where you sit. Older patrons claim the corners or the spots where the water is hottest, and it's understood you don't take those places unless invited. Groups of friends cluster along one side, leaving the center open for those who like to float or stretch their legs. If a newcomer approaches, people shuffle slightly to make room without anyone having to ask. Attire follows its own code. In some towns, the bathhouse is strictly divided by gender, with loose linen shifts worn inside the water. In yours, the pools are mixed on certain days, and modesty is observed through careful draping of towels or light garments. Children splash more freely, but the adults move with a kind of deliberate grace, wrapping themselves as they leave the pool, never lingering bare for too long. You learn, too, that the etiquette extends beyond the water. In the antechamber, dripping on the food table earns you a raised eyebrow from the attendant. Leaving your wet linen bunched on a bench means someone else must pick it up, and that's considered poor form. And perhaps most importantly, you never, ever take the last piece of honey pastry without offering it around first. Over the years, these rules become second nature. You follow them not because someone is watching, but because they make the bathhouse feel safe, calm, and shared. And you begin to notice that for all the scents, sounds, and warmth, what truly makes the place comfortable is the invisible web of courtesy that holds it together. One quiet nod, one small shift to make space, one soft word at a time.
As you grow older and your visits stretch into years, you begin to notice that the rules of the bathhouse are not fixed in stone, not when it comes to the question of who bathes with whom. In your childhood, most days are separated by gender, men in one wing, women in another, with the sound of conversation and splashing echoing faintly through the walls between them. But on certain days, festival eves, market closes, or those rare winter afternoons when the snow falls so thick that everyone forgets their caution, the doors are left open between the wings, and the baths become shared spaces. At first, you don't think much of it. Families arrive together, neighbors greet each other across the pools, and the mingling feels practical, even pleasant. But as you grow more aware of glances and gestures, you see why some in the town call these controversial days. A mixed bathhouse hums with a different kind of energy, more laughter, more shifting of eyes, more careful arrangements of linen as people climb in and out of the water. The warmth itself seems to sharpen your senses, the way it makes your skin flush and your heart beat just a little faster. Your parents, like many, have their opinions. Your mother says that mixed bathing is harmless if everyone remembers their manners, and that in her youth it was more common than it is now. Your father is more cautious, muttering about how gossip travels faster than steam, and how reputations can be bruised as easily as pride. The town council occasionally debates whether to ban it outright, citing moral concerns, but they never follow through, perhaps because the bathhouse is as much a social hub as a place of cleansing, and forbidding half the population from mingling in its warmth would feel like dimming the lanterns in the main square. For you, the mixed days are simply part of the bathhouse's living rhythm. You see the way merchants lean a little closer when discussing business with a rival of the opposite sex, how old friends linger longer in conversation,
how children weave between the adults without caring who belongs to which side. There is a kind of balance at play. The warmth makes people bold, the steam softens the edges of formality, but the quiet presence of attendants and the shared etiquette keep everything just shy of impropriety. Still, you've overheard the stories. The ones traded in whispers by the washerwomen or over cups of spiced wine in the antechamber. A tryst arranged in the hottest pool? A marriage sparked by a shared rinse at the basins? A heated argument about a misplaced towel that ended in something far more tender. Whether all of them are true hardly matters. In a place like this, half the appeal lies in the hint of possibility. When the day ends and the pools are drained for cleaning, the mingled air lingers for a while, a blend of voices and scents that is different from the usual. You carry it home in your hair, in the slight ache of your muscles from staying in the water longer than you meant to, and you understand why the mixed days, though debated and sometimes frowned upon, always return. They are a reminder that the bathhouse is not only a place for heat and cleansing, it is also a place where the rules can bend, if only for a little while, letting people meet in ways the rest of the town would never quite allow.
There comes a season when you are old enough to be trusted with the healing pools, those tucked-away chambers in the far wing of the bathhouse, where the water is not just heated and scented, but drawn from special sources said to have powers of their own. They are smaller than the main pools, each one no bigger than a merchant's wagon, and the air in these rooms is heavier, denser, carrying the faint metallic tang of minerals. The attendants speak of them with a certain reverence, as though they are part of something older than the bathhouse itself. The first time you are led there, the floor feels warmer under your feet, and the stone of the walls has a darker, richer color, stained from years of mineral-laden steam. An elderly attendant, whose skin glows faintly from decades of soaking in this place, tells you that the water comes from a spring deep under the hills beyond the town. It flows here through its own channels, untouched by the boilers, arriving at just the right temperature, as if the earth itself has heated it for you. You slide into the pool and feel immediately that it is different. The water is thicker somehow, a little more buoyant, as if it is carrying you instead of the other way around. Your skin tingles faintly, not from heat, but from something else, something in the water that makes it cling to you even after you rise. Around you, a few other bathers sit in quiet contemplation, their eyes closed, their chins resting on the stone edge, as though they are listening to the water's slow pulse. People come here for all kinds of reasons. Some are recovering from injuries. Others believe the minerals will ease their aching joints or draw the melancholy vapors from their blood. A merchant's wife swears the water cured her stubborn cough. A traveling mason says it restored the strength in his hands after a long winter of pain. Whether all of it is true or not seems beside the point. There is a calm here, a sense that you have stepped into a pocket of the world where time moves more slowly, where the water is less about washing and more about being held. The healing pools also have their quirks. The smell is sharper, more earthy, and clings to your skin long after you've left. Some say this is the proof of its power. Others just wrinkle their noses and wrap themselves tighter in their linens. On certain days, attendants stir in additional herbs, juniper for cleansing, sage for strength, lavender for peace, turning the water cloudy with tiny flecks of green. The surface shimmers under the lantern light, and you find yourself staring into it as though there might be something written there for you to read. When you leave, the air outside the chamber feels cooler, lighter, almost insubstantial after the dense warmth you've just experienced. Your skin hums faintly, and you have the curious sensation that the water is still around you somehow, as if you've taken a piece of it with you into the rest of the bathhouse. And in a way, you have, because from that day on, you know that there are baths for the body, baths for the spirit, and baths like this, where the line between the two blurs until you can no longer tell which part of you has been truly cleansed.
As the years pass and you become a familiar face in the bathhouse, You begin to collect the odd little tales and whispered beliefs that cling to the place, like steam on the rafters. Some are harmless curiosities. Others are delivered in the low, serious tone of someone passing down a truth they think you ought to remember. Together, they form a kind of folklore, the strange bathhouse superstitions that weave themselves into the daily rhythm of the pools. One of the first you hear is about the unlucky pour. An old washerwoman warns you never to be the first person to ladle water from the morning's fresh fill. She claims that overnight, as the bathhouse sleeps, restless spirits wander through the empty chambers, trailing their unseen fingers through the pools. The first scoop, she says, gathers whatever those spirits leave behind. Whether it's meant as a ghost story or just a ploy to get someone else to test the temperature, you can't quite tell. Another belief insists that certain days are best avoided altogether. The locals mutter about wet Fridays, when storms roll in from the coast, bringing a heaviness to the air that makes the water turn against you. On such days, they say, you'll leave the bathhouse feeling heavier rather than lighter, your aches lingering as if the heat refused to do its work. Some still come, of course, but you notice they keep their visits short, their movements subdued, as though not wanting to tempt fate. Then there is the matter of the echoing splash. If you hear a single loud splash from an empty pool, especially one that should be still, it is said to be a sign that someone in the town will soon fall ill. The attendants roll their eyes at this one, blaming loose roof tiles or the sudden drop of a handful of leaves from a vent. But you've seen how even they glance toward the empty pool when the sound happens, their movements just a touch slower afterward. Some superstitions are more practical in disguise. Many insist that you must enter the hottest pool only after sitting in a warm one for a while. Otherwise, your heart will startle, as an old man explains while easing himself down the steps. Others believe that letting your towel touch the floor will spill your luck for the week. And so you see even the most absent-minded bathers keeping their linens neatly folded on the benches. Children are raised on these little rules. You remember being told never to count the number of floating petals in the water during a festival bath. Supposedly, if you reach the same number twice in a row, you have a year of bad fortune. Whether or not anyone truly believes it, no one ever seems willing to test the theory. With time, you realize that these superstitions, whether born of caution or whimsy, are part of what makes the bathhouse feel alive. They give the pools a sense of mystery, a layer of unseen etiquette that sits alongside the official rules. And perhaps that's the quiet magic of them. In a place where the air is thick with warmth, and the line between comfort and vulnerability is always shifting, a few old stories give people a sense of control, a feeling that they know how to move safely through the steam, even if it's just by avoiding a certain day, a certain scoop, or a certain uncounted petal.
There comes a season when you are old enough to be trusted with the healing pools, those tucked-away chambers in the far wing of the bathhouse where the water is not just heated and scented, but drawn from special sources said to have powers of their own. They are smaller than the main pools, each one no bigger than a merchant's wagon, and the air in these rooms is heavier, denser, carrying the faint metallic tang of minerals. The attendants speak of them with a certain reverence, as though they are part of something older than the bathhouse itself. The first time you are led there, the floor feels warmer under your feet, and the stone of the walls has a darker, richer color, stained from years of mineral-laden steam. An elderly attendant, whose skin glows faintly from decades of soaking in this place, tells you that the water comes from a spring deep under the hills beyond the town. It flows here through its own channels, untouched by the boilers, arriving at just the right temperature, as if the earth itself has heated it for you. You slide into the pool and feel immediately that it is different. The water is thicker somehow, a little more buoyant, as if it is carrying you instead of the other way around. Your skin tingles faintly, Not from heat, but from something else. Something in the water that makes it cling to you even after you rise. Around you, a few other bathers sit in quiet contemplation, their eyes closed, their chins resting on the stone edge, as though they are listening to the water's slow pulse. People come here for all kinds of reasons. Some are recovering from injuries. Others believe the minerals will ease their aching joints or draw the melancholy vapors from their blood. A merchant's wife swears the water cured her stubborn cough. A traveling mason says it restored the strength in his hands after a long winter of pain. Whether all of it is true or not seems beside the point. There is a calm here, a sense that you have stepped into a pocket of the world where time moves more slowly, where the water is less about washing and more about being held. The healing pools also have their quirks. The smell is sharper, more earthy, and clings to your skin long after you've left. Some say this is the proof of its power. Others just wrinkle their noses and wrap themselves tighter in their linens. On certain days, attendants stir in additional herbs, juniper for cleansing, sage for strength, lavender for peace, turning the water cloudy with tiny flecks of green. The surface shimmers under the lantern light, and you find yourself staring into it as though there might be something written there for you to read. When you leave, the air outside the chamber feels cooler, lighter, almost insubstantial after the dense warmth you've just experienced. Your skin hums faintly, and you have the curious sensation that the water is still around you somehow, as if you've taken a piece of it with you into the rest of the bathhouse. And in a way, you have, because from that day on, you know that there are baths for the body, baths for the spirit, and baths like this, where the line between the two blurs, until you can no longer tell which part of you has been truly cleansed.
As you continue to age within the rhythm of the bathhouse, you begin to notice the subtle hierarchy that exists beneath the friendly greetings and shared warmth. Not all pools are truly equal, and not every bather slips into just any water. There is a quiet choreography to it, a system of unspoken rules that dictates who sits where, how long they stay, and even which conversations unfold in which corners. The wealthier patrons tend to gather in the deeper, hotter pools near the center of the main hall. These are lined with smoother stone, warmed more evenly, and often scented with more costly herbs. The merchants and minor nobles who lounge here wear their status lightly but unmistakably, rings still on their fingers, hair oiled and bound neatly, attendants waiting nearby with fresh towels. Conversations here are low, deliberate, often about trade routes, tax changes, or political gossip that is just safe enough to be spoken aloud. You learn quickly that slipping into one of these pools without invitation earns you a glance, polite enough to be deniable, but firm enough to make you consider leaving. Along the outer walls are the family pools, where parents keep an eye on splashing children and neighbors exchange news about harvests or upcoming festivals. The water here is slightly cooler, the laughter a little louder, and no one minds if a towel slips or if someone accidentally brings in a stray leaf on the sole of their foot. It is friendly, welcoming, and the easiest place for newcomers to start before gravitating elsewhere. Then there are the quiet pools, usually tucked behind pillars or down narrow steps, where the elderly and the solitary soak without much conversation at all. These spaces feel slower, almost sacred, and the water here seems to hold its heat in a different way, as though it has absorbed the patience of those who linger in it. Sitting in one too long can make you forget how much time has passed, which might be the point. Occasionally, the boundaries blur. A merchant might wander into the family pool to greet an old friend, or a grandmother might shuffle into the hot central bath on a particularly cold day, tolerated by the wealthier patrons because of her years. But for the most part, the bathhouse's social currents flow in predictable patterns, and learning them becomes part of knowing the place. You find yourself adjusting too, choosing where to go depending on your mood or your company. Some days you want the hum of serious conversation, others the chaos of children's splashes.
Still others the silence of a pool where the only sound is the soft lap of water against stone. And through it all, you realize that the bathhouse is not just about cleansing the body, but also about knowing how to move through its unspoken society, reading the steam, so to speak, as easily as others read a market ledger or a court's subtle politics.
From time to time, the bathhouse transforms entirely, shedding its daily rhythm to make way for a festival night. These evenings are rare enough to keep their magic, tied to feast days, harvest celebrations, or the arrival of an important guest to the town. You can always sense one approaching. The attendants move with an extra hum in their steps. Merchants bring in bundles of fragrant herbs from distant hills, and the air inside thickens, not just with steam, but with the promise of something beyond the ordinary. On festival nights, the lamps burn brighter, multiplied until every ripple in the pools dances with gold. Wreaths of dried lavender and rosemary hang from the rafters, their scent steeping in the warm air, while baskets of petals, rose, marigold, chamomile, are emptied into the water, turning the surface into a slow-moving garden. Musicians set up in the driest corner, the gentle pluck of lutes and the slow hum of flutes weaving through the hiss of poured water. The pools themselves are no longer simply places to bathe, they become gathering circles. Friends sit shoulder to shoulder in the heat, trading stories as bowls of spiced wine or honeyed cider are passed carefully from one bather to another. Even strangers find themselves leaning in to speak, the boundaries that normally separate the social circles dissolving like steam. It is a night for laughter, for relaxed shoulders, for voices carrying softly across the room without fear of judgment. The attendants, who on ordinary days keep a brisk pace, move slower now, lingering to join a conversation or add another handful of petals to a half-empty basket. No one hurries anyone along. No one is told their time is up. The bathhouse belongs equally to everyone in these hours, and the water seems to hold its heat a little longer, as though it knows the night is special. By the end, when the lamps burn low and the petals have gathered in quiet clusters against the pool edges, the air feels different, thicker, almost drowsy. You leave with your skin warm and your hair carrying the scent of flowers, stepping into the cool night as if emerging from a dream. And though the bathhouse will return to its usual rhythm the next day, you know that nights like these linger, tucked into the memory of the place, like the faint scent of lavender in a wooden beam, long after the wreath has gone.
In time, you realize that the bathhouse holds as many secrets as it does stories, and not all of them are whispered openly. Some belong to the very stones, to the hidden corners and passages most bathers never see. You hear of them first from an elderly attendant who speaks in the slow, deliberate way of someone deciding whether you are worthy of knowing. There are narrow doors, half hidden behind storage shelves, leading to maintenance passages that snake beneath the pools. Down there, the air is warmer still, heavy with the mingled scents of damp stone, hot metal, and whatever herbs have drifted through the drains. Pipes gurgle overhead, carrying water from the boilers, and you can hear the muffled rhythm of footsteps from the rooms above. Some say these tunnels were once escape routes, dug in an age when the town feared sudden attack, though now they serve mostly to keep the fires stoked and the water flowing. Other secrets are less structural and more about human nature. The bathhouse, with its soft light and shifting steam, is a place where people's guard slips, and confessions often rise as easily as vapor. You've overheard merchants quietly discussing debts they'd never admit in the market, lovers making tentative plans for a life together, and elders recalling pieces of history that never made it into any official record. It's as if the warm water draws the truth to the surface, loosening the knots in tongues as much as in muscles. There's also the matter of the so-called moon pool, a small chamber at the farthest end of the building, with a narrow opening in the roof through which moonlight sometimes spills. The attendants insist it's just an unused room, but people whisper that on certain nights, the reflection of the moon in its water can show you something you've lost. Whether that's an object, a memory, or even a person depends on the teller, but the story clings stubbornly, as persistent as steam on cold glass. You find yourself wondering how many of these secrets are true, and how many have grown from the bathhouse's long life, its ability to cradle both body and mind in a space that blurs the edges of time. Perhaps that's the real secret, that once you've stepped through the doors, you move through a world where history and the present mingle like currents in the same pool, and you leave with more than you came in for, even if you can't quite name it.
The years fold over themselves, and the bathhouse becomes not just a place you visit, but a place that quietly marks the passage of your life. You grow older in its steam, your reflection in the rippling water changing from that of a child to a youth, from a youth to an adult, and then into the lined, softer features of someone who has seen more winters than summers ahead. The pools are as they always were, yet you know them differently now. Their heat seeps into bones that tire more quickly. Their scents stir memories of people who no longer step through the doors. You begin to notice that you keep to certain spots out of habit, that the places you once sought for noise and laughter now feel too loud. You find the quiet pools more often, where the light falls in muted patterns across the stone and the steam drifts slowly enough that you can watch it curl and vanish. Around you, the bathhouse fills with new faces, children darting between benches, young couples leaning close in conversation, and you see in them the same eagerness you once carried. There is a comfort in knowing that the rituals have not changed. The attendants still sweep the floors in wide arcs, the copper boilers still hiss and breathe, the first splash into the hot pool still draws that collective sigh. Even the old superstitions linger, though now they are spoken more playfully, as if they've become charms to keep the place anchored in time. One day you catch sight of yourself in the polished brass of a water ladle, and it strikes you how many of your years the bathhouse has quietly held. It was there for your first plunge into warm water, for your visits with friends now gone, for the nights when the festivals turn the pools into gardens. It has been a witness to every version of you, a keeper of moments both small and lasting. When you finally step out into the cool air for the last time, you carry the heat of the pools with you one final time, the scent of herbs clinging faintly to your hair, the echo of water lapping its stones still in your ears. The door closes softly behind you, and the bathhouse breathes on without you, as it has for centuries, ready to warm the next life that steps across its threshold.
And now, as the last image of the bathhouse settles in your mind, let it soften, like steam fading into cool evening air. Imagine the glow of lanterns dimming, the gentle hiss of water easing into stillness, and the final footsteps of the night's bathers growing quiet in the corridors. The warmth of the pools lingers in your skin, steady and calm, while the cooler air brushes gently across your face, balancing heat with freshness. The great wooden beams above seem to hold their breath, the scent of rosemary and lavender hovering just enough to remind you of comfort without demanding you think of anything more. The floor beneath you is smooth and warm, and you feel the way each step toward the exit draws you not away from the bathhouse, but deeper into your own sense of rest. Outside, the streets are empty, cobblestones dark with the moisture of the night. Somewhere, far off, a bell tolls softly, its echo folding into the quiet. The world is unhurried now. No merchants calling from their stalls, no laughter spilling from open tavern doors. Just the gentle rhythm of your own breathing, matched to the slow, distant drip of water from a rooftop gutter.
You think of how many people have passed through those doors over the centuries, each carrying their own stories, each leaving a small trace behind. The bathhouse keeps them all in its own way, in the grooves worn into the stone steps, in the polished shine of the ladles, in the faint, ghost-like perfume of herbs that never quite fades. And as you walk away, you carry it too, not as a place you might visit again, but as a quiet warmth that belongs to you now, as much a part of your memory as your own reflection. Your shoulders loosen, your eyes grow heavier, and the night stretches before you like a calm, still pool. Somewhere beyond the edge of waking, the bathhouse doors remain open in your mind, the steam curling upward into the soft darkness, waiting, patiently, without hurry, for you to return in dreams.